Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Taming the Perilous Skies 100 Days to Launch. This is the weekly interview series where we take you step by step through a debut author's journey from finished manuscript to cross-platform multimedia launch. My name is Patrick Wimp. I'm a screenwriter, I'm a filmmaker, and I'm a film educator at the University of Iowa. I'm also a member of the spoken content team, and our titular debut author is Phil Marshall. Phil is the founder of Spoken, an AI-driven audiobook narration platform, and he's also the author of Taming the Perilous Skies. How are you feeling today, Phil?
I'm good. I'm especially excited about today because it comes on the heels, not but maybe what, 2 hours ago, of the final cover assets having been received for my debut novel, and I'm so excited about our guest and about that timeliness and all things that come with visually representing my work. And so yeah, totally excited.
Love that.
Who do we have, Patrick? Who do we have?
Well, so as you alluded to, Phil, right, today we're going to be talking about aesthetics. Today we're going to be talking about book covers in specific. Jumping back just a second for those who, maybe this is your first time joining us. Each week on Taming the Perilous Skies 100 Days to Launch, we tackle a different topic, right? A big picture topic, from inspiration to revising your manuscript, genre, market, product fit, the self-publishing industry as a whole. And we bring in incredible experts and an all-star team of, folks to help us out. And so, as Phil just mentioned, today's topic is aesthetics, your title, your imagery, your book cover, everything that's visual. And so for that topic, we are joined by all-star writer, designer, husband, and dad, Jason Gurley. How are you, Jason?
I'm excited to be here. Doing really well. Thanks, Patrick.
Well, we're really excited to have you. And looking at your bio and your website as we kind of prepared for this conversation, you've done a ton. You've done a lot as a writer, you've done a lot as a designer. Obviously, you connected to Phil through book and product design, cover and product design. And so, one, it's just wonderful to talk with someone who has so much experience in so many creative areas. But, our focus here on the series is to help debut authors, right? Help people who are kind of just getting started in their creative journey. So could you tell us a little bit about your creative journey?
I've been a designer for close to 30 years. I got my start at an internet service provider in Anchorage, Alaska, of all things. Sort of stumbled into design there. Spent a few years working for agencies on big brands like BlackBerry and Apple and things like that. And made a transition into product design about 12, 15 years ago, which is where I met a friend that Phil and I have in common named Nadia, who introduced us down the road. But I've also been a writer myself, self-published and traditionally published for the last 15, 20 years. I mean, I wrote my first book right after high school. I was terrible. Every chapter of that book opened with a Counting Crows lyric. That's how bad it was. Yeah, so I've been on the self-publishing journey off and on for the last few years, and got my start in cover design by leveraging all of my design experience to create my own covers, which pretty quickly connected me with a lot of other authors who needed the same thing, and we are off to the races. That's
pretty amazing. And so it looks like you've kind of dabbled in both self-publishing and traditional publishing with some of your books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my early days in the self-publishing space, I fell in with a lot of other authors who were very similar in profile to me and what I was doing, and quickly connected with Hugh Howey back in the 2012, 2013 era, when Wool and all of his other titles were starting to blow up a bit, and had a great opportunity to connect with him, do a few of his books, to sort of bring them up to the level of like a professional cover, which is something that we all as indie authors deserve. And from there, I've worked on hundreds of books for indie authors, and I've done quite a bit working with publishers as well. And my goal is that the work I do for one or the other are both at the same level of quality. Every author deserves a cover that tells the story in the most professional, right on target kind of way. And an indie author should have access to the same tools, the same creatives, the same path to publishing that everyone else has.
Yeah,
that's kind of how I operate.
I think we operate on a similar wavelength, and we feel the same. You kind of hit what was going to be my next question, but maybe there's some more that you've got in terms of process, which is you talked about that idea of everyone deserving the same quality. Everyone's story should be told through that cover. And so for you, what makes a great book cover? What brings that story to life visually? Obviously, it's probably going to be different for each person, but
100% different for every person. I love to get a sense of who I'm working with, right? Like Phil strikes me as a risk taker, someone who's willing to kind of skate out there on the creative edge a little bit. So working with him on the cover for Taming the Perilous Skies, we got to explore a lot of really unique territory. Some of it was more far-flung than others, and we found that happy medium. But I love to chat with authors, get a sense of who they are, what they love, what they're hoping to do with their career, with their individual book, but also the long-term story they're building. And then I want to serve that. I want to come in and just sort of lift up what their goals are and help them get there. We all know book covers matter. As much as we say we shouldn't judge books by covers, we all, of course, do. And so I want to do beautiful work, but I also want to do work that's like squarely on target, like it's going to help them succeed.
Yeah, I was going to just chime in and I was going to call out, Jason has done some pretty astounding, like high profile projects also, right? I mean, you did some of the best or some of the most well-regarded follow on to like the Wool series, the serialization of that kind of work. And then you also did Hugh Howey's covers, which now that it's a well-known Apple TV Plus series, right?
Mm-hmm.
That becomes a big deal. And so I mean, for me, hard sci-fi, I've seen your work, Hugh Howey's, covers, and this was kind of like down in the middle of a fairway, but you get faced with what you get faced with all sorts of genres, or no? I mean, like what's the array of different things that you focus on?
Yeah, well, I can tell you the project I did right before yours, Phil, was a Quebecois language nonfiction, educational guide. So I'm a little all over the map. Any designer, I think, is interested in kind of playing in a lot of spaces. I love working on a good literary novel. I've done poetry covers. I've done nonfiction. Science fiction seems to be kind of a sweet spot that people come to me for, and I'm a sci-fi lover myself, so I'm happy to play in that space. But I always like to try to push the covers a little bit, to acknowledge what the genre expects, and then see if I can take that, a little farther, twist it in an interesting way to stand out from the pack a little bit.
Yeah, and in fact, when we started exploring ideas for Taming the Perilous Skies, I had a number of different notions, and I had sort of the zany, like this is melting my brain when I think about, the theory and physics and the fabric and religious implications and strange, things like that. Like that becomes more of a, I don't know about, I mean, you captured it perfectly. I'll show it in a second, the sort of zany, option. But then there's the just genre appropriate, and really just building to genre, which is what we ended up with. What's going to be the main cover. But we also toyed around with just, I mean, you were like, okay, I'm just going to throw this one way out in left field because you said that. So this is like, and what you did was that you kind of probed like, where are the edges, right? Where's my brain at? Is it in this department over here? And I don't know, as our conversation went on about Taming the Perilous Skies, a hard sci-fi adventure story, maybe on the sort of edge. I'm flattered if anybody calls it a techno thriller. I'd like for it to be on that edge. I don't think it really lives up to that. But anyway, as we walked through that, what was important to you on kind of where it fit, and and what my different crazy ideas are. Like, how do you like, oh, well, just throw that one over there, because if that's where he is, then we better know that now. Kind of
Yeah,
thing, right?
yeah,
How do you
yeah.
like cast that net?
It's a fun question. I like to probe, a little bit into the story. As a cover designer who is Patrick, as you mentioned, also writing, also working as a product designer, also a dad, also a husband. I don't have time to read every book that I design. So I do a lot of work up front to understand the author, the story they're telling. I want to know what themes are being explored, what iconic settings or characters or objects might appear. So I have a sense of like some touch points to explore in a practical way. But I also like to get a sense for where they see their book like slotting into the existing spectrum of the genre they're playing in, right? If you're a sci-fi writer, are you closer to, let's say, Neil Stephenson, or are you closer to Ray Bradbury? It's a broad spectrum, and I want to make sure that I'm mapping that. I don't always get that from the author. So Phil, what you're describing is one way for me to throw a lot of different pitches and try to locate like the right strike zone for the author themselves. And sometimes that means the covers are like far afield. Phil, I know there's a couple of covers that like they were never even in the running for for what you were doing, but they were a perfect cover for a different kind of book. And we were able to narrow, I think, what did we look at? Like 9 cover concepts to start with?
I'm gonna actually, since you brought it up,
okay.
I'm actually
Let's
going to show our initial wave of the different
Great.
options. Now this,
Yep, the
the
progression.
viewer should know that this came after I sent him way too deep a Google slide presentation of here's what happens, here's sort of tagline ideas, here's like kind of the gestalt, what are the comps, and I sent like 20 different, like, I'm thinking about these comp covers, and I'm happy to say that it actually ended up being better than any of those. For my work, it's better than any of them. Basically, Jason just said, hey, this is what this is drawing upon. And so there was an option. Here's a nice zany option. I like that one a lot. And another, this was more just traditional, and a lot of people, when they saw that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's sci-fi. That's the one I like the most. And I'm like, it's not the one I like the most.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one was totally fun, but didn't necessarily hit on any of the things right away. And then this one, we toyed around with the single figure, and then Jack and his son Eric as the dual figure, and then something reflecting in the orb, some sort of hubris of the inventor of anti-gravity, Medlock. And so that's the one we dug a lot down further into. This one was totally fun. A lot of people
wow.
love this. It's just we couldn't really get the right Medlock, and people told me, doesn't matter, make it provocative. I'm like, no, it's got to kind of be the right Medlock. So then though, there was this one. Everybody's like, no, it doesn't say anything, it doesn't whatever. But you know what? For the mind bending, this sort of with my brain is melting right now. I approach that I really kind of going after. I am offering this up. I'll show you the variation in a second. As an alternative for Kickstarter purchasers, but
cool.
this one right here was the one that most everybody landed on, and then let me just go ahead and jump right to the punchline here on what we ended up with, what just arrived in my inbox, not but moments ago. Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
Yeah.
we can.
So this is the book cover, and so we've got 2. Like I said, we've got 2. This is the ebook cover, and then we have the full-on jacket, right, with for the hardcover, which is totally cool. Persistence and gravity, and you've got Medlock, the hubris of man, next to the White House and the Einstein equations for general relativity. You've got some fun little quotes. You've got the marketing blurb. So Jason, tell us. I want to go through 2 of these options, and I want to just get your thoughts on just kind of your creative approach here on all this.
So you showed an earlier version of this cover that was a little more about the mood and the sort of the abstract style. But I loved it so much. I also wanted to give you one that really zoned in on the human story in the foreground. So that's why we started with the silhouette of Jack in front of the orb. And it's not literal. There's nothing about this cover that is particularly literal, but I think it captures a particular vibe, a mood. It gives you a suggestion of this looming, ominous, disastrous experience that's, setting off your story. We did tinker quite a bit with the orb and what lives inside that reflection. And it was not particularly easy to zero in on what we finally landed on. But that's part of the joy of this, is you get to really just sort of explore and tinker with it. And I think the real winning shift in this cover, this came about halfway through the process, I think, with Phil, was let's bring the main character's son into the silhouette. Let's ground it in this human, this really, really emotionally, threatening scenario. Put a child in peril, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, the stakes of this book, they must be incredible. It was incredibly fun to play with all of the flung bodies in the background, the disaster. A number of those bodies, I think, are just completely broken. It's a lot of fun. But when I say Phil is kind of skating on the edge and taking some risks here, I think that little editorial quote on the front is a perfect example of that. I don't know that most authors would be game to tease a reader in this way, but I think it works so well for this
Well,
concept.
I appreciate that, and I'm going to take an episode later in this process before launch and talk about just consultants and all the people that helped. And this particular consultant, an actual NASA physicist, is one of the most interesting stories. I mean, I had an FBI agent that's based out of Langley as a counterterrorism expert advise me on what it's like when the shit hits the fan at the national level. I've had so many different consultants, but this particular one, I had to do a little bit of tongue in cheek here. Because rather than evaluating my computational, mathematical, and scientific excerpts, he decided instead to critique my plot development and my character development. And so in a particular passage where I invoke the Higgs boson and pion condensates, which is just actually a little side conversation where somebody's trying to go into why the SAMCAM combination is what shields from the force of gravity. The main character stops him because he doesn't want to hear all that. But the consultant put in their yikes, right? And I thought, you know what? I asked some people for blurbs that very, very graciously declined, but this one I'm like, I want that. And Jason, thank you for saying what you did about it. Because that's the reaction I want people to have. It's like, wait a minute, that intrigues me, but what about it is yikes? Well, his yikes was, why in the world would you say such a thing? But, yeah.
My take here is your book is, you're doing something with humor and with, like you've described, the sort of zany point of view here. This quote tells me that this book is not a straight fastball down the middle. This is a slider that hits the corner, and it's a little more interesting, a little more dynamic, and it sets the reader up, I think, for a little bit of a fake out in a good way.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope you're right about that. I will ask you to reflect on this alternative, because this is just the one I wanted. Nobody else.
I love this cover. It's simple. It's understated. It's very abstract. This says nothing, like you said, it says nothing specific about what's happening in the book. It's just meant to grab you and suggest, like, this is a place you want to hang out for a little while. This is going to resonate with a particular vibration that you as a reader might feel. And this was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And I got to say, this one started out even simpler than what you see here. The sort of Einstein, what do you call it, Phil? The well at the center there?
Yeah, exactly. Gravitational well, or yeah.
that was a later addition to this cover that just sort of gave it just a little bit more of an anchor. And it's a small thing, but it's a lot of fun. I really like it. And nothing about this, typography or anything else says this is your average indie author's sci-fi debut. This doesn't tell you a lot about it. It gets you curious, and hopefully that does some work for you.
Yeah. So this whole journey, I mean, Jason, I mean, you've gone through this journey so many times. I have to think that the sci-fi is close to your heart, and it's just, and this project was particularly special, but but I'm guessing you approach this so disciplined each time that it's probably fulfilling no matter what genre.
It really is. I gotta say, like, I get as much joy from doing a concept cover like this one as I do from, say, working on a nonfiction language book. It's just, they each have their own problem to solve. They each are going to do their own thing for the author and reader. And I love just kind of unlocking that. My goal really is, as a designer, I'm not here to show off. I'm not here to make something that pleases me. I want to make something that builds that bridge between the writer and the reader, and helps connect that, whether it's in terms of sales or just word of mouth or whatever's going to drive that connection, because that's what keeps the author going. That builds their career. And maybe it gives me a chance to work with them again in the future. So
one thing that comes to mind, because this series is for debut authors in particular, and the debut author journey. Do you have any particular sort of insight or reflection on the problems that debut authors like myself have? In other words, they're not as aware of what market is, right? Of
sure.
And that kind of thing. Like, what comes to mind that pitfalls of debut authors when it comes to the visual?
I really think that the biggest challenge that a debut author faces, especially an indie author who doesn't live and breathe publishing every day, is you just don't know what you don't know. And you don't know what advice you collect on the internet is good advice or will work for you. It's really different for everyone else. So you have to be prepared going into it as a little bit of trial and error. You might try 5 different covers before you ever land on the thing that really just sizzles and connects with your readers. I've designed covers for authors where I've been so proud of the cover. It's looked great. And a month later, the author has updated their cover with something else, because they're taking swings. They're taking swings looking for the thing that connects. Sometimes it connects, sometimes it doesn't. And that's true for every stage of the publication process, whether it's creating assets or marketing or driving sales, promotions, whatever. It's a scary journey. And it helps to have people in your corner who are trying to build that bridge under you to help you get there.
I'm curious. You must have been faced with authors that are like, no, this is what I want, and you're like, oh my God, this is what a disaster. Yeah. But then it just somehow like you're surprised by how something that looked like that actually did pretty well. Is there any good example or real big surprise you can think of that?
I gotta say, the Hugh Howey covers that I worked on for the Silo series, I did a collector's hardback edition for Subterranean Press, and I was a little stunned by how smoothly that went. I expected, because I was working with a boutique publisher who's building something that was going to be potentially very high demand. Every edition is signed by Hugh and numbered, and some are leather bound, and they're special books. I really expected that to be a challenging project. And the first thing I served up, everyone was just like, that's it. We're all on board. And part of me was like, oh no, it can't be over already. Like I'd like to try a few more things here, but I'm really proud of those covers, and they are probably the simplest, most iconic things that I've had a chance to work on.
And so, Jason, now Wool has had a number of different cover treatments, right?
Yes, it has.
And so the one that I recall that sort of has your sort of signature, as I recall, is the staircase one. Is that right?
Yeah, I've got it here, in fact. And hopefully you can see it. It's wrapped in plastic, so you might get some glare.
Yeah, the staircase. It's a staircase.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. So it's not a complicated design. It's really simple and understated. It's not cluttered with
But it's
you
a
know,
spiral,
editorial
though.
quotes
It's a
or
spiral
anything
of
like that.
stairs, right? And that's really what it is central to the story, as we all know now, as we
Yeah.
watch Apple TV. I knew it already
Yeah.
because I read the books. Who are you listening? So
Yeah, you were ahead of the curve on that one.
yeah, sure.
Um,
Right. So, but yeah, so that
that
one,
was a lot of fun.
yeah, really pretty iconic, right? And to me, I see that and I'm like, to me, that looks like you, right? That looks like
Oh, thank you.
it's got, I mean, for whatever, yeah, I don't know why that is. I feel like I could pick your work out of the lineup afterwards.
It's wildly unlike most of the things that I've done, so I find it impressive that you were able to connect those.
Well, maybe what it is, it's the simplicity of concept and image as opposed to clutter. Some might argue that mine's a bit cluttered, but I think we did. You helped to declutter it quite a bit. I want more of the orb. I said, no, put the Milan Duomo as well, and the Archbishop, and make sure the president's in there. She's gonna have her daughter also.
Well, by my watch, we'll be talking in a year or so. We'll be doing a special limited edition boutique cover for you, and we'll have a chance to get a little bit more avant-garde with what we do there.
Good. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, the journey, this part of the debut author's journey, I must say, has been an absolute delight. I thank you for that.
It's the most fun that I ever had doing design, I gotta say.
Oh my
I
God.
love
Well,
doing
that's
this part.
awesome. So any parting, I'm sorry, Patrick, I'm totally chomping on your hosting event. Any
No,
parting on words for debut authors?
Patience is the biggest thing. Patience and a willingness to just try things and learn. And bring me along for the ride. I really like the ride, and I'd like to be a part of anybody who would like to build that long-term career and try things out.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jason. Thanks for your stories and your insight. Where can people find you?
For my book design work, you can find me at jgbookdesign.com. For my writing, you can find me at jasongurley.com.
Perfect. And for everyone else, you can find Phil on all his socials. You can find us back here next week and check out those daily check-ins as we march forward and the 100 days are getting thin. September 12th is approaching. And yeah, we will keep on keeping on. So thank you for joining us.
Spoken.